First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Matthew, the 22nd chapter. And Yahweh Shai answered and spake unto them again by parables, and said, The kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which made a marriage for his son, and sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding, and they would not come. Again he sent forth other servants, saying, Tell them which are bidden, Behold, I have prepared my dinner, my ox and my fatlings are killed, and all things are ready, come unto the marriage. But they made light of it, and went their ways, one to his farm, another to his merchandise. And the remnant took his servants, and entreated them spitefully, and slew them. So who are the servants, right? If you look at the story here, the king, right, is the Most High, right? He set up a kingdom. He set up, this way for his people. But when everything was ready, and he sent his messengers to go and tell those that were bidden, right, which are Israel, to come, right, everything is ready. They found different excuses to turn to the Lord, right? And then eventually they ended up slaying his servants that went to call them to come to the Lord. And so, as it says here, but when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, and sent forth his armies, and destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city, which was the Lord casting judgment upon Israel for them refusing to turn to him, right, and slaying his messengers. Now, remember, this is it's a parable, right? So it's not literal, okay, but it's symbolic for this relationship between Israel, the Lord, and how this all ties in to the kingdom, right? And how these things play out, or this ministry. So it says here, Then saith he to his servants, The wedding is ready, but they which were bidden were not worthy. Go ye therefore into the highways, and as many as ye shall find, bid to the marriage. So who are these servants? Once again, the prophets, right? Who are sent, the teachers that are sent out to go and bid as many as they should find to the marriage. So those servants went out into the highways and gathered together all as many as they found, both bad and good, right? Because as we, prophesy and as we teach, you're going to have people that come in that believe sincerely, and you're going to have people that come in that are not sincere, right? So you're going to have good and bad, like the parable that mentioned the kingdom being likened unto catching fish in a net. And when you draw it in, it has both the good and the bad. And then you separate it, and then you keep the good and you cast the bad back out. So here, this is just another parable that's symbolizing more or less the same thing. And the wedding was furnished with guests. And when the king came in to see the guests, right, like the Lord also mentioned, many are called, but few are chosen. He saw there a man which had not a wedding garment. So that's one that was say in the body or the congregation, but wasn't chosen. All right, they weren't worthy of being there. So when the time of the wedding came, the Lord differentiated. So he saw this person and said, This person doesn't have a wedding garment, right? And he saith unto him, Friend, how camest thou in hither, not having a wedding garment? And he was speechless. And he said to the king, then said the king to the servants, Bind him hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness, because he didn't have the sincerity, okay, of the truth. So he didn't fit in. He was here, but he wasn't really of us, right? The scriptures say they went out from among us, right? Because they were not really of us, roughly paraphrasing. And cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. See, so this is the moral of the parable is that, right? When the Lord mentions the kingdom of heaven is likened onto, it doesn't always mean like that being in the kingdom itself, but all the things that transpire, right, in relation to that, the ministry, the those that would come in, those that would hear, those that would not, all of these things. So you'll have a lot of people that are called, people that are going to come in, people that may labor for a while, but they're not really meant to be here. And in process of time, the Lord will show who are his chosen, and those that are not will be kicked out. They will be cast out into the outer darkness and basically not gain salvation. And that's why it mentions weeping and gnashing of teeth, which is sorrow. Then went the Pharisees and took counsel how they might entangle him in his talk. And they sent out unto him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, Master, we know that thou art true and teachest the way of God in truth. Neither carest thou for any man, for thou regardest not the person of men. Tell us therefore, what thinkest thou? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar or not? So they were trying to get Yahushua to say something where they could say, look, see, he's enticing people to break the law. Get him. But Yahushua perceived their wickedness and said, Why tempt ye me, ye hypocrites? Shew me the tribute money. And they brought unto him a penny. And he saith unto them, Whose is this image and superscription? So whose image do you see on here? They say unto him, Caesar's. Then saith he unto them, Render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things which are God's. If the money is Caesar's and he requires a tribute, then you pay the tribute. You pay the tax. It says money anyway, right? And the things that the Most High requires, you give that to him. And when they had heard these words, they marveled and left him and went their way, because he answered them without saying the quiet part out loud. So they couldn't, get around to, and see, you said this, and they were just stuck. The same day came to him the Sadducees, which say there is no resurrection, and asked him, saying, Master, Moses said, if a man die having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up seed unto his brother. That's in the law. Now there were with us 7 brethren, and the first, when he had married a wife, deceased, and having no issue, which are children, left his wife unto his brother. Likewise the second also, and the third unto the 7th. So each of them would marry the wife, but before they had a child, they would die, then so on until the 7th. And last of all, the woman died also. Therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be of the 7? For they all had her. Yahushua answered and said unto them, Ye do err, not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of God. For in the resurrection, which in verse 30, he's referring to the spirit world, right? For in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven. So in the spirit world, there is no marriage, there is none of that, because those are things of the earth, of the flesh. Desire, marriage, offspring, eating. Those are all things of the flesh, but it's not like that in the spirit world, right? Just like the angels. But as touching the resurrection of the dead, have ye not read that that which was spoken unto you by God? Because the Sadducees didn't believe in anything after death. They believe that's it, you just cease to exist. So he's saying here concerning like what happens after somebody dies. Do they just is that it for them? Do they just not live again, or they just cease to exist? And he quotes the Old Testament, right? He says here, have ye not read that which was spoken unto you by God, saying, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. The point Yahushua was making here was that it's in the tense that he used. At the time where the Lord said this in Exodus to Moses in the mount, right, with the burning bush, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were dead for some centuries now, right? But the Lord didn't say, I was the God of Abraham, I was the God of Isaac, I was the God of Jacob, right? Because then that would signify that was it. Because when you're the God of someone, that's a covenantal relationship. And so the Lord didn't speak as though it had ended because they had died, and that was the end of that. He spoke in present tense. I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, which is the point the Lord is making here, is that he spoke of them in that covenantal relationship of God and man symbolizing or signifying that they live, that they're alive. Whether they're in the spirit world or whether they're on the earth, they still exist. They don't just cease to exist. Okay, else how could the Most High be the God of the dead? Right? If Abraham died and that was it for him, why would the Lord say he is the God of Abraham if Abraham doesn't exist anymore? Right? So the Lord was just using that to prove the point that in the Sadducees thinking that once you die, that's the end of you is false, because you go to the spirit world, but you come back again on the earth, right? There's the process of reincarnation. And the Lord also mentioned many times about how you would have people from the four corners of the earth that will come and sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and the prophets in the kingdom. How is that going to happen? And when the multitude heard this, they were astonished at his doctrine. But when the Pharisees, and actually I want to read this. Let me see how this sounds in the... Yeah, okay, so they all kind of say the same thing. Verse 24, but when the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together. So they came together, they started thinking, they said, man, this guy's really going to be a problem. If he was able to silence the Sadducees, because, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they went back and forth at it with each other constantly. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him, and saying, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Yahushua said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. And the Lord said that because the foundation of all the laws, the things that the Lord requires of you, the do's and the don'ts, you will follow if you love the Lord with all your soul and your heart and your mind. The things pertaining to your neighbors, right? What you should do and what you should not do to them, you would do if you if you love them as yourself. And when you look at the laws, most of it is centered around how you either sacrifice or the things you are required to do to and for the Lord, and then the things you're required to do and for your neighbor. And that's how we govern ourselves. So if you love the Lord and you love your neighbor, you'll do all these things. And while the Pharisees were gathered together, Yahushua asked them, saying, What think ye of the anointed? Whose son is he? They say unto him, The son of David. He saith unto them, How then doth David in spirit call him Lord, saying, The Lord said unto my Lord, Sit thou on my right hand, till I make thine enemies thy footstool. So they're saying, he asked them, who's the anointed, who's the Messiah? They said, oh, the son of David. He said, okay, well, explain then, how is the son of David David's Lord? David called him the Lord, right? He said, the Lord, which is the Most High, said to my Lord, which is the Messiah, sit on my right hand. So the Lord, the Most High, said to the Messiah to sit on his right hand till he makes his enemies his footstool. So he's saying, if the Messiah is David's son, how does David end up calling his son his Lord? And they were stumped. But really, it's because David's son Solomon, the spirit of the Messiah was in Solomon. That was an incarnation of him on the earth, just not as Yahushua. Okay, but it was the same spirit that came back as Yahushua. And no man was able to answer him a word. Neither durst any man from that day forth ask him any more questions, because he made a fool out of them, right? And so they realized, you know what? Let's be very careful with him, and let's not even try to trip him up in his words anymore at this point, because it's not going to work. He's just going to flip it on us. And that brings us to the end of the book of Matthew, the 22nd chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rechak, Wadash. And until next time, Shalom.